How is everything with living, studying, and working in the UK? I hope it's all coming together. Today, I thought we should discuss the types of accommodation here in the UK. And today's perspective is from my own knowledge. So if you're already staying in the UK, I'd like to know what you know about types of accommodation here in the UK. But if you're a newbie or you have completely no idea about accommodations here in the UK, hear it first from your girl. Okay, everybody old and new, let us rub minds in the comment section down there. But other than that, let me start. So I'll be coming from the aspect of three. I've divided it in, I've splitted it into three based on my knowledge and experience. So there is the government-owned property, there is the housing association, and then there's the individual-owned properties. And for all of the types of accommodation I'm going to be mentioning, I'll also be telling us the pros and cons that I know of. So starting with the government-owned accommodation, there is the council houses and flats, and there is the hostel accommodation. Shedding a little more light, the council houses and flats are houses built and catered for by the government, by the borough, by the council of an area. So this council accommodation here are catered for by the council. So the council gets cleaners for the communal area to make sure the area looks good. If there are things to repair in the building, the council sorts that out for those who are living in there. And this includes the council houses, the council flats, and the hostel accommodation. Let me explain the hostel accommodation. The hostel accommodation are buildings that are occupied by people that the council intend to house. So the council at the moment is taking care of their sheltering and still trying to probably find them, better accommodation. Better because the hostel accommodation is not so convenient. So as I'm talking, I think I'm mixing the pros and the cons together. The hostel accommodation is not so convenient in the sense that people get to share. You're going to have to share the communal area, you're going to have to share toilets, share the kitchen and stuff. You probably only have a room to yourself, while the council is trying to house these people in proper accommodation. And usually there is a waiting list. So the council puts people who they intend to house on a waiting list, and usually they get to, allocate them to their own accommodation based on availability. So at times the pattern is from hostel accommodation to council flat or council house. Now, speaking of pros and the cons, so with the hostel accommodation, it can be, the pros of it is you're literally paying nothing. The council is housing those in the hostel accommodation for free. Almost everything in the hostel accommodation is free, aside probably maybe feeding. People there get to have to, take care of their feeding. They do not have to pay for the cleaning of the communal area and, all of that expenses. But what you might consider as the downside is privacy. With the hostel accommodation, people are bound to share communal areas like the kitchen, the toilet. They just wait for their turn, or just know how they're gonna manage the situation within themselves, living with these neighbors, right, and know when it's best to run their personal activities. That's with the hostel accommodation. About the cons, it's not available to everybody, because as a matter of fact, before the council will be obliged to house anybody, they have to meet certain criteria. The most general criteria is to have lived in a particular council or have attachment to a particular council for at least up to 5 years, and usually this person should be British citizens. And if not, in this situation where they're not, they usually should have recourse to public funds, even destitute status. So there's certain criteria and conditions they have to meet, which is reasonable to the council for them to find them fit and or eligible for council housing. That's the con. It's not available to everybody. But with the council flats and council houses, which, as I said, many times it comes from that step of from hostel accommodation to full-time council accommodation. Usually that's how it transcends. It could be otherwise, but usually that's the pattern. So for the council houses and council flats, the pros of it is the houses are very affordable. The houses are well maintained by the government, And from the much I gathered, people who happen to reside in council accommodation over time are afforded the opportunity to purchase those properties given certain conditions considerable by the council. What we'll call the downsides of it as well is that getting the council accommodation can be very difficult and it's not available to everybody. Next is the housing association.